Hello and welcome to the Free Cheese, episode 558. I'm your Joe Dix, joined by Matt Zellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games, brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. Matt, this week we're taking a break from ranking a video game, and we are wandering into the dark corners of the mall to discuss the arcade. We're going to talk about its past, its present, and its future, and how we relate to that. But first, Matt, what do you expect when you walk into an arcade? What's the one thing you know is going to be there? No matter what. No matter what the arcade, no matter what the time period, no matter state, country.
Skee ball.
Yeah, you're right. I'm thinking back like, yep. Because I'm like, no, not that. Oh, yeah, it was in the corner. Yeah, like it's always there. Are you good at skee ball?
I'm not bad. I'm not going to produce a high score every time, but I definitely can get a round going.
Sure. Do you want to be good at skee ball?
Not really. Don't care enough.
I think you get tickets that you turn into prizes, and what's the best prize you've ever taken away from an arcade? Period. Any arcade, any experience like that. What's the thing you've been like?
Arcade? I've definitely at a carnival playing skee ball. I've taken away a giant fucking beanie dragon that was large enough that could wrap around me.
That is a crowning achievement. What color was it?
Green.
Nice. Big wings, small wings?
Small wings. Just big, just it curled. It was like a big curling dragon. Yeah. It was badass.
I remember
for a couple years, and then the bean started to fall out of it.
And then that's all you can do. It's got to go.
Yeah, it's got to go.
I assume there was some skee ball involved, but I remember this was at the boardwalk. It was one of those machines. It's 4 players can play. The light goes around in a circle, and you need to stop it right in the right on your button to get it. And I don't know if it was just ADHD or whatever. Something got my friends and I way into that to the point where we could win every time. Every time we tried, we just nailed it. Always got it. Unless the machine cheated you, because it did cheat you.
Right, yes.
Yeah. But we could get it. We made a pretty good living on that. And honestly, I don't remember what I got. I remember someone got like a statue of a dragon or a wizard or something. Like one of those big ones that they weigh a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like I traded it in for like a beard comb. It wasn't an actual beard. It was like a switchblade. You know what I mean? Like a switchblade comb that you'd use. I used it on my beard.
Yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I feel like every accompanying skee ball, every arcade I've been to, always a DDR machine.
Mm-hmm.
It has not died. I feel like
there's always an aroma around it too.
Because they don't leave. They've been there. So for the listeners, we did go to an arcade in preparation for this episode, and we'll talk about our experience a little bit more in depth. But at that arcade, there was the same kids wearing the same clothes they've been wearing since 2003, since 1993. Well, I guess DDR wasn't there in 93 necessarily, but those kids are still there. If you're one of those kids, you know that you're still there. Thank you for listening to us live from the arcade. We appreciate your patronage. So let's go back in time before we talk about what we've been doing. What was your experience with arcades as a child?
I really didn't go into them a lot. It was probably like a once or twice a year type of thing. And it was really the boardwalk at the old Ocean City, Maryland.
Yeah.
Especially growing up, they still own the spot too, but we would go at least once a year for about a week or so, and then they lived like right over the 50 drawbridge. I'm speaking if you know Ocean City, Maryland. So if you go over the drawbridge going into Ocean City, Maryland, right on the other side of the drawbridge, before you're even fully all the way down, there's like little like houses right there. He owns one of those.
Okay,
he owns one of those. Like you can wave, flip off, moon, whatever you want to do from that porch.
Go from there and walk to the 7-Eleven. I know exactly.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So if you go straight down, it's actually the cut of the boardwalk you go into is that little section where Dumsers is, and I think it's Funland is the one on the corner.
That sounds
so
right.
That one was a frequent one. And then when we got a little crazy and we took a little stroll down the boardwalk, go to One Marty's Playland.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the third one. Because there's like one, there's Marty's Playland, there's like one right next to it or right across a cut. But yeah.
Are they all still there now? I feel like they were definitely big in the 90s. Yeah, and I know some of them still exist.
I will be able to tell you real soon because I'm going down there for a little small weekend.
Oh,
yeah. I'm around the boardwalk, I think. So I might stroll down there.
Yeah, you should wander in and see what it is. The last time I remember being in that space, the machines all resembled more of what you'd expect out of like a modern Dave & Buster's style thing.
Yes. Even with all the swiping terminals, too. They all have them.
Yeah. But the big attraction I remember when I got to be like in my 20s was the douchebag magnet, the big thing you'd punch it to see how hard you punched it. You know that thing?
That thing that's at a Buffalo Wild Wings?
Oh, do they have that there? Yeah. Then
I'm pretty sure there's one in the White Marsh.
Yeah. It's just all of my dirtbag friends that were trying to impress whatever girls didn't care about them. They had to stop and punch that thing. And then the other guy had to punch it harder than that guy did. And I sat on the side, playing with my hair and smoking cigarettes, wondering why nobody would talk to me. I remember, arcade-wise, I think a big part of the 90s child experience with arcades, besides dedicated arcades, you also had things like Chuck E. Cheese and Discovery Zone, among others, but those were obviously the big ones. And that was probably my biggest exposure to arcades, or I would say my most frequent exposure to arcades, because you had, I mean, dude, most of those places, I guess Chuck E. Cheese was an event, right? You had the whole show of the whole thing, the pizza, the games, all that. Discovery Zone, at least the one I went to, also added laser tag that was also then later branded as Men in Black laser tag. So you had the double attraction. And there'd be a lot of birthday parties at these things. So you end up there probably once a month, right? Because you tend to make friends that have they're somewhere in the Zodiac and you end up going to a birthday party. And then if not, it was always a good way to kill an afternoon or something like that. So we ended up going quite a bit. But we also did have a dedicated arcade. Did you ever go to the Tilt arcade?
Tilt arcade? No, I went to the laser tag one at East Point.
Yeah. That one, I went to that one a bunch too. That one I think was the first place I had the skateboard. I forget the name of that skateboarding game. You know the one I'm talking about? It was like an orange, had handrails you were supposed to hold, had a really rickety, it might have been called like Grind or something.
Whenever I think of those machines, I always think of like the snowboarding ones. I'm sure it makes sense there's a skateboarding one. Your boy was lights out. He became really good at the old Fast and Furious right there front and center when he walked into the left.
Now, when did that Fast and Furious come out? Was that with the first movie?
I don't know. This would have been... we were frequently going there in middle school for like the Friday night, like $20, all you can play until midnight, laser tag stuff. It was around there. I'm assuming like 1, 2. It was probably before the reboots, but Tokyo Drift's been out already. Kind of that break before everyone discovered they needed a paycheck again.
Yeah, exactly. Top Skater. Funnily enough, developed by Sega AM3, the team who would later go on to create a series called Crazy Taxi. So more on Sega in the arcade next week. But yeah, so that one I remember playing over there. And to your point, like that was in like that the Discovery Zone, the Chuck E. Cheese. Those are all like locations where the games were not the only attraction. And I think that's what has ended up surviving. Like dedicated arcades kind of fell off. But I think back then, the other thing you would see is arcade machines or arcade adjacent machines showing up in places they might not have otherwise. Like, I think even way back, you would have places like pizza places that would just have an arcade machine, like one single arcade cabinet in the corner, or a, bodega or a sub shop or just something like that just ends up having like, oh, well, they've got a Street Fighter. They've got a whatever. I remember my local Pizza Hut had Michael Jackson's Moonwalker in the corner, and that would later get swapped out for something else and whatever. But I also remember like when my brother played, was it? I don't know if they officially called it street hockey. Maybe it was just indoor hockey, like recreationally or whatever. Mm-hmm. We would go to that spot, and while he would do that, I would go into their little game section and play the pinball machines all night. They had other stuff, like they had that Beachhead 2000 VR. But yeah, and then we did have a dedicated Tilt arcade that was like in the mall, and it was like a full-on just dedicated arcade, and it was small enough where like you couldn't do something like a laser tag in it or anything like that. It really could only hold on to arcade machines. And by the time I got into middle school and high school, that was the one where like that's where the DDR kids hung out and all that, and like those types of things. And you had to watch which corners you wandered into and all of that stuff. That was the spot, and that ended up shutting down. Like, and I don't know why, honestly. It's now like, if you need, well, actually, I don't know what it is now. For a long time, if you needed slip covers for your Nokia cell phone, that's where you went.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
But prior to that, or I'm sorry, since then, I don't know what it is, but it always seemed like it did well. I mean, this is through the lens of a, 12, 13-year-old, so I don't fully know the business of it, but it always seemed popular enough. So I guess we just hit a point where it was not. What do you think killed arcade? Did consoles kill the arcade?
Probably. Yeah, like the whole like couch co-op thing. I think generally just generally consoles probably did it. Because I was gonna say that was always my draw. It was like, oh, back in the day, it was like all these games look really good on these cabinets, and my Super Nintendo could not produce 3D like that.
Yeah.
And even when you got to like PlayStation 1 stuff, it looked a lot better. We're getting there, but the arcade cabinets still had better, like, better looking stuff, technically, usually.
Yeah, and I think there was something like that. The appeal of an arcade for me was always like you could play games you could not play anywhere else. You'd get the latest in technology, to your point, but you also had experiences that were different. I remember the first time I remember realizing that games went one way, started it as one and came to the other, or had simultaneous releases or whatever. I think we saw it with things like fighting games, but I just didn't think about it. But it was seeing Cruisin' USA in an arcade for the first time, or really probably at the bowling alley or something, and realizing like, oh, that's it. But the different experience is like that, especially like you have the tactile feel of the steering wheel, that metal pedal that you hit, shifting like from, and it's not a full on, it's just a 1, 2, 3, 4, but like having that shifting experience, like all those little things ends up, I think, drawing you into that experience a bit deeper, because you just can't replicate that at home easily. Was there a particular game or anything that would draw you into an arcade back then? Was there something where if you passed by, you had to stop and go in because they had...
I think it changed over time, but I think the mainstay, probably to this day, is a Time Crisis machine.
Yeah.
There's just something about light gun and like the pedal.
The pedal,
the
really
cover,
good.
like it just clicks.
Yeah, and we'll talk in a minute here about the arcade we went to, but that was one of the first games you mentioned aloud, just even in there. And I think you even knew it wasn't in there. It was just sort of like, boy, if they had that. Like, I think that's a good call on your part. Like, yeah, Time Crisis, I think, is definitely your answer. I'm with you. I think mine's changed through the years, where I think I had a period in my life where like Donkey Kong was the answer because I felt like I was getting good at Donkey Kong, even though I was not. And yeah, I don't know now. Usually, like a pinball machine of a certain kind will pull me in. If I know they have it, I'm there. But I didn't think about it. But to your point, anytime I'd find one of the House of the Dead games, those would always grab me. They were a lot of fun, even though I was terrible in the arcade versions, and I'd really like blow $1 just to do nothing. They're still
right. Yeah,
a good time. So we went to an arcade, and honestly, the way that we planned this was we have an episode coming out next week on Outrun, the video game, and the idea was we would obviously talk about and play Outrun, but we would find an arcade cabinet to play it physically in person. However, the only arcade within driving distance that has an Outrun machine is a little more than an hour away, which wouldn't deter me normally, but I also think the only version that they have is the stand-up cabinet. So we opted to go for Round 1, which is an interesting arcade in the modern experience. And we'll talk about what we did at Round 1, what we played, and what the experience was like there, but I also want to kind of broaden that into what the general modern experience of the arcade was. So looking at Round 1 specifically, we hung out for 2.5, 3 hours maybe?
Yeah, somewhere in that round. I don't remember the exact timing of it all.
And we played a good number of games. And so you'd been before. We went with Mark. Mark had been before. I had not been before, but it was, to me, very reminiscent of a Dave & Buster's, just without the... I don't even know why it felt different than a Dave & Buster's, because when I break it down, like, I think all the games are pretty much the same.
It's the giant claw machine section, and, like, it doesn't really push the restaurant at you. It's
okay, the restaurant,
like
yes.
Concession stand with some food. It's more like a theater concession stand, I would say.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's stuff to eat if you want it, but it's not the draw. Where Dave & Buster's, I always felt like the food, yeah, you're right, is the front part. It's like you're going to a Buffalo Wild Wings, what happens to have an arcade next to it.
Yeah, 7,000 TVs has 1,000 cabinets.
Yep. To your point,
I was going to say, although Dave & Buster's does have a bunch of fucking TVs at that bar. I have stopped in the middle of a walkway to see like a fourth quarter or...
Yeah. But to your point, yeah, this one has a ton of claw machines in the middle, or UFO catchers, as you may alternatively know them to be. Round 1, they're Osaka-based, and what's neat about them bringing their arcades to the US is that they also bring games that are otherwise unlocalized in the US. So we end up with, in some cases, games that are straight up just not translated at all. You are getting the Japanese game, and I mean, the good thing is you can kind of navigate through most of those menus without too much trouble, just because you've played video games before. But there's some things, like we played, I think it was the Initial D game when we played that one, where it was just like, not even, because sometimes if you just know katakana, you can start to make out sounds and you know, like, okay, this is arcade start, this is multiplayer, this is whatever. Like, you can sound those things out. But there's other, like, stuff in Initial D had straight up kanji. Like, you needed to know a little bit of your... Yeah, it was a rough time. So, what was your favorite game we played at Round 1?
Probably the House of the Dead game.
Oh, really?
Towards the end, I think.
Dang.
That or the what was the last racing game? Was it Maximum Tune 5DX?
Maximum Tune 5DX Plus.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was good. That was the one we played
the
multiple rounds of, right?
Yeah. And then Mario Kart's always, it's Mario Kart, so.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the next time we go, then we need to start with House of the Dead, because by the time we got to House of the Dead, I was 1 credit.
Oh,
No, so when I went to Japan, I saw that House of the Dead machine in an arcade. It was a Sega arcade I was in, and they had one of those machines, but these 2 kids were in it the whole night, so we could never get into it. So, and I kept thinking, like, man, if we see that again, I want to play it. And then, I think as you'll recall, I don't know if it was this year or last year, at some point in my annual predictions, I continue to predict that Sega's going to release a console port of that, mostly because they just want to play that game, and they've yet to do it, despite the VR2 being right there and ready to go. But yeah, by the time we got to that machine, and it was free this time at round 1, it was like 10 credits to play, and I had 9 credits or something. And it was like, well, we're not hanging for too much longer. I don't see the point in re-upping for $25 or something to just play a couple rounds of this. But I didn't realize that was your favorite, so we'll jump into that, because I want to play that for sure. And you know what, Matt? I'm an idiot. I keep saying that next week we're doing Outrun. Next week we're not doing Outrun.
I was waiting for the correct moment to.
Yep. Next week we're doing part 2 of our Halo series, but we will have a little touch. Round 1 will continue to bring fruits to this podcast, I'll tell you. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, 2 weeks we're talking Outrun. That's right. The thing with Mario Kart, I mean, to your point, it is Mario Kart, but again, it's different. It's like my Cruis'n USA experience. Like, you just kind of have a different experience with it, playing it physically with pedals in this case, and the game itself is different than standard, like, Mario Kart 8 or anything like that. Like, it's its own thing. And another one where, like, I don't know, man, they could have ported that to Switch and sold a whole bunch. Actually, maybe they will. I don't know, though. We might be.
It's weird. It seems like it just belongs in the arcade.
Probably. Were there any, like, disappointments? There was the big one, I think. But
yeah, I mean, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Not that it was a disappointment, but because it was in all Japanese, the initial D game, we couldn't. Yeah. We all ended up playing separately, which was a bit of a downer.
No, I thought we were racing one another in that.
No, it was the story mode thing. Remember, it was just 1-on-1 with the.
Oh, right, you're right.
Yeah, it was the maximum tune games. We got it all figured out.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It just did that. Yep, you're right.
I mean, not that it was a bad game by any stretch. You imagine it was just we were trying to, and then we couldn't read. Had no idea what the fuck was happening, and
well, even
you're
still,
only given
like
60 seconds.
I thought we'd picked the right thing, and it still like didn't. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good call. I forgot about that. X Games Snowboarder like was not what I thought it was going to be. You know, it was a bit more stiff. Like, I don't know. Or I'm sorry, like the controls were stiff, but the character movement was more light. Like, I felt like my actions didn't reflect how floaty and free the character felt. You guys did Daytona Championship USA, and we're not thrilled about that version of Daytona, right?
Yeah, it was fine. I don't think his speakers worked on that cabinet. Mine did work, but I kind of fucked myself. I ran out of time and couldn't get the manual transmission, so it was just automatic, which takes the fun out of it. Now that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that extra element gets lost. I had a similar experience on Gitadora. So that was one thing that's interesting about round 1. They have a lot of Japanese rhythm games. Gitadora, they had the version that's basically Guitar Hero, with, you know, an actual little guitar you can play, but they also have the drum set, and it feels more like a full electronic kit than it did like the Rock Band drum set or any of those. But that one, the song selection, the D-pad that you use for that, the down button didn't work. So then you're scrolling through the list to try and pick songs, and you can only go up. And what ended up happening is, just like you had with Initial D, the counter's ticking down. You only have 90 seconds, I think, to pick a song. You're going through and you're like, do I know that one? Do I want that one? Do I want that? And then, oh, wait, I want that one that I just passed. Okay, I have to shuffle all the way through. That was a mess. So I ended up kind of playing some songs I didn't want to, just because I was running out of time and had to just make a selection. Groove Coaster, I've tried to play before. I never understand Groove Coaster at all. I probably just need to take time and learn it if I'm going to try and play it.
The wheel, right?
That one is my. You're talking about the one with the wheel of buttons? Yeah. Groove Coaster is the one that, like, you hold more...
those knob things.
Yeah, you twist the knobs and you slap the knobs, and I always feel like I need to do more than I actually do.
Slap it.
That's what I expect it to do, and maybe it does, and I just still am doing it wrong. But I did play My, the one that has the buttons in a ring, and that one's... Have you ever seen video of, like, people playing that hardcore where they've got their gloves?
No, I haven't. Oh, they have gloves.
Dude, yeah. No, when we were in Japan, we saw a dude who had his little gloves. He'd carry them around in his pocket and pop them out, put them on, and he'd pop, play the whole machine.
It's as good as the towels for the DDR players.
Yeah, well...
When they wrap the towel in the back.
A full necessity, right? You want to throw out the big disappointment of the afternoon?
I mean, yeah, the Bomberman game was pretty rad for the 10 seconds our credit got us.
I think we all thought it was going to be Bomberman, where you put in money, you had a set number of lives, and you went until you got knocked out. But in reality, you pay per bomb that you throw, which is the stupidest.
Yeah, it's like one of those. It's trying to mimic like one of those. I'm trying to think of like one of those fishing games. It's like a fully interactive board, and you go to different spots of the board, and like you cast out a rod, and you have to time it to get like the perfect fish at any second for the most amount of tickets. It was trying to be something like that, where you got to a section of the bomb. Like the grid you would typically see on a Bomberman game. And depending on where enemies were and different obstacles and stuff like that like you were bombing to get credit or tickets. And we did not know that. And yeah, that's why you're paying per bomb.
So stupid.
It was real bad. It was real expensive too for something like that.
Right. It wasn't like 50 cents for it was a significant amount of... It was less money to play the NBA.
Like, the hoops. Yeah,
we were. Yeah. Which I don't know if that was my favorite or not, but we came back to that one a lot, and I had a good time playing that.
I definitely had fun with that. I was thinking more cabinet when I was answering that question, but I definitely had fun with that.
No, yeah. No, cabinet-wise, I agree. I think my favorite thing there was that Maximum Tune 5DX. Something about the machine itself just felt really good. Like the actual physicality of sitting there and driving that car and all of that. And I think the cars felt, I don't know, we had fun playing. We did that one twice back to back. That was a good time. We'll talk more about Halo Fireteam Raven next week. But one of the disappointing things there is that the account linking was not working for us to get our achievements. So that was kind of a letdown. But is there a game that you wished they'd had at the round one?
I wished I'm not going to say Time Crisis.
You can say Time Crisis.
Yeah, I wish that the Tomb Raider machine was working, because I actually have never played that, because I never had other people that would like play it with me.
Yeah.
So, that's just such a big screen and board, and I was curious to see how that played.
Yeah, because I think I've seen... Is that at Dave & Buster's as well?
Yes.
I think I've seen it there, but did not play it there. Just kind of... Because I think people were just on it the whole time. Which game will bring you back to round one?
To round one, I don't know. It's not like that one. Not here, at least. There's not like that one that grabbed me so good that's like I'm gonna come back to play that specifically. But I think there's like a good all around. There's some stuff. There's some stuff there for someone. I think, yeah, like I wouldn't mind spending like, somewhere between $10 to $20, the next visit, and feel like I can get my money's worth going to a few cabinets.
I honestly saw myself like, I could, if I'm ever wandering through this mall, I could pop in and do the drums a little bit on Gitadora or something like that, and maybe do a round of Initial D or Mario Kart, one of those driving games, just to like sit down and have that experience, like just to kill time. I feel like would be fun. I ended up not using their app, but I did download it to see like, could I easily add funds to my little card? And you just have to also give your credit card over to them. And it was just easy enough to walk up to their counter and pay them that I didn't bother to.
See, they don't have the tap. I'm pretty sure Dave & Buster's let you tap now.
Oh, with your phone? See, that'd be much better. Yeah.
And then like you just put into your little Dave & Buster's card into your wallet, and it's all...
That's easy. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I will go back there for sure. I've only ever like walked through there one time before, and then I've peeked at it because now there's a retro video game store right beside it, which is cool. And I've been to that store a bunch, but I've never like gone from that store and said, "Well, I'll go play some games." So this was neat to hang out at for a bit. And that's kind of like I don't know. I feel like round one, Dave & Buster's, that is a bit of what the modern arcade experience is like. But how else would you define the modern arcade?
I feel like there's a lot of branding now. Like before, like there has to be a reason like a cabinet goes in. It has to have some kind of brand behind it. Like, there's like a Minecraft dungeon game there instead of it just being some kind of generic thing. There's a big Tomb Raider light gun game instead of it being like an Area 51. There's a lot more something with purpose, kind of, there's a name behind it, not just like, oh, this thing kind of looks cool.
Do you think that's indicative more of arcades or of the gaming culture or the video game business as a whole?
I think that it's just, they gotta, like, me saying Area 51, I don't think it's going to turn many heads, but, like, if I said, something like a Tomb, maybe not Tomb Raider, but something with that pizzazz, I think that gets more like, Halo is a good example. Like, Halo probably brought us to round one, and then we got to experience the other stuff around it.
I literally never went to a Dave & Buster's and never planned to go to a Dave & Buster's until Fireteam Raven came out. That was the first and last time I've been to a Dave & Buster's.
Yeah, so like there's like stuff like that. Like there's stuff, you need stuff to get people through the door. And I think once you're there, you can find other stuff, and like maybe you end up liking the arcade and you go back there. But I think it's tough to compete for people to come through the door right now, and you need those big names.
Yeah, and I think a place like that, like what stinks for me is like I go in and I'm like, I hear Pac-Man sounds. Oh, cool, they've got Pac-Man. And then I go and I look and it's like that ain't no Pac-Man. But I do feel like we've seen things swing the other way in the last 15 years, where now there's been this rise of the barcade, which the first one I ever went to was in New York, but I mean, Barcade TM has expanded into Philly and other part of New York, and I forget where else, but they're out there as a thing. And then that just kind of became something that people did. Open a bar, put a bunch of arcade machines in it, voila. And that seems to be going all right. And it seems like what's interesting I've noticed about the barcade scene is that it does attract a more, I think you can get a casual audience, but I think you do get people who are interested in playing the games. And then surrounding that, you get people who are interested in maintaining those games and that space. So I find that most barcades, the machines tend to be up and running. If there is something down for maintenance, it's not down for maintenance long. And the machines are in like good repair, things like that. You don't often find things like just rows of machines that are out of order. Which that was the one we would go to a lot around here before it closed, called Crab Town, USA. That they were pretty good too. I mean, they were a like crab shack restaurant, like hole in the wall, whatever kind of place. But in the back, they had this huge section of pinball machines and arcade machines and all of that.
Classic arcade.
Classics. Like, yeah. So that's the thing, right? I think with the barcade experience and with this type of thing, you get kind of the antithesis to a Dave & Buster's where it's an actual old school machine in most cases with original hardware, with the CRTs still maintained, that kind of stuff. And I feel like in that place in particular, I think just by the end of it, they were ready to close down because it was like a small family business and they ended up shutting down and like moving out of state or retiring or something like that. And you could see leading up to it that like the machines were getting less and less attention and less maintenance and that kind of stuff. But that one for a while was like a good solid go-to and something that I thought was like really nice to have around and have close enough. It was like a 25-30 minute drive. Overall, do you have a favorite arcade that's still around, or even if it's not one that you've been to that you liked?
I've never been to any like the official barcade stuff, but like I don't know, I don't hate Dave & Buster's experience. I don't necessarily like the one nearest me, but there is another one about 30 to 40 minutes away that I know is a lot better. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's fun for a night, especially like we go out to eat. We've done it a few times where like me and Victoria will go out to eat, and we're like in like it's not just close to us, but like we're in that area, and then we're like, oh well, you want to kill the rest of the night, like going there, having a couple drinks, and putting $25 on a car, because like if you put like $25, you get like $30 or $40. But like they do all those deals,
the super promos,
supercharged, So like you get your money's worth out of it, and a couple drinks, and before you know it's like 11 o'clock, and you're like, oh shit, all right, time to go.
Right, yeah, you can burn through time, and they have enough stuff that you can entertain yourself and pass time with. The one I would say in recent memories that has stood out to me that I think I've gone to twice now, and I would go again, is called Silver Ball. I might be wrong about the name. I feel like it's Silver Ball. But it's in New Jersey on the, in Asbury Park. And they kind of tout themselves as a pinball museum more than just an arcade. But they have a ton of pinball machines. And they've got one of the things where, like, you pay them a flat fee and you go in and you just get free access to all the games that are in there. You don't have to go in and pay per machine. I think you can maybe, but I think usually you just go, you give them $20 and you get like a 6-hour day pass or something like that. You go in and all the machines are set to free play and voila. So that was fun. They had a lot of pinball that I had not seen at other places. That was a good time. But I think that's what I like more is like, I don't know, when we would go to Crabtown, they still had it set with quarters. So you'd have to bring, your own giant bag of quarters that you carry in your trunk for most of the calendar year.
The tennis canister.
Oh, I'm thinking you just had like a trash bag or a grocery bag.
No, it was the tennis ball. It was the tennis ball canister of quarters.
Or you just bring a bunch of cash that you can convert. But yeah, I think I like the like give us $20 and you can play for a couple of hours kind of thing. What is your ideal arcade experience?
Something unique, I think, now, because like graphics power, like the thing I used to chase as a kid, there's so much parity now, and nowadays I don't even know if you want to go for realism, but like a cool art style that sticks out. Like there's tons and tons of games that do unique things there. But like, the light gun experience. Yeah, there are things nowadays like PlayStation Move and VR are starting to chase some of that territory and stuff. but it's not something I have on hand. I mean, even the driving stuff, I have a wheel now and pedals and stuff like that, and the haptics on the wheel itself are cool, but like I don't have a good chair or that good like. I don't know, some of the cabinets, like, they rattle the chair with you as well. Like, I don't have all of that. The only thing I miss is, like, playing some racing games, like the shifting paddles instead of I have to use the stick. But, like,
oh, yeah.
Other than that, like, that's still probably best experience in an arcade.
Yeah.
Unless you have a legit setup or whatever. But it's like that kind of stuff. I'm trying to chase the more unique stuff that I can't play on a controller.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, and I think also like the part for me, it's less about the game and more the experience. But like, you can't easily replicate not just the stuff, the machines themselves. Because to your point, yeah, like you can get pieces, but it still might not feel exactly right, like with the machine itself or the equipment. But I think also the experience of like usually. When I've gone to an arcade, it is something I do with people. So there's, that part of it too, that like you can't always easily replicate at home. And yeah, I mean, like playing a driving game, most of my memories of playing Daytona USA way back when are of me and or my brother reaching over to the other one's shifter and pulling it back into first gear in the middle of the race. And then punching the other one when they do that. You know what I mean? Like just stupid things like that like, you're not doing that at home. You're not doing that with a controller unless you're kicking a controller. And it's a whole. But yeah, I think today, like, I think it was cool having some experiences I hadn't seen before and hadn't had before. But I also missed some of the classic arcade games. Like, I do wish we had a better way to play a lot of those things more regularly. I think something like California Extreme that happens every year where just all of these collectors come together in this big warehouse and bring machines and you can just kind of play and look, and it's a bit of history, but it's also a chance just to hang out and play arcade games. I think that's a neat experience. I wish we had something like, if something like that could tour, but that's just so not sustainable. That would be a neat little project. But I think like what I've defaulted to is just finding these little niche spots to go to, play things for an afternoon, and that's it. I think in terms of like what we got to experience, I like that the round one has bowling. If we wanted to go bowling, like that's right there in the space. And I think again, like, I don't know, the modern arcade experience or the modern arcade game is so different because they're so differently like tuned and built and all of that. Like that scene has just changed. That I don't even know what we're missing in terms of experience, but I like seeing what new is still out there, even if it's sometimes boring or bad, like Bomberman Arcade was. We talked a bit at the beginning about kind of what the appeal of the arcade was and what it could do differently. Do you feel like that is still there with a modern arcade?
Yeah, I think so, because it depends on the spot too, your and what you're looking for. But now, what's unique now with the arcade is you do have this. I think it's easier to obtain the history. I guess it's not because you have to find the cabinets and stuff, but like you can find it a little bit easier. I feel like to find a Donkey Kong machine, it's like harder. Not that you can't do it at home, but there's a difference in finding that machine out in the wild. And then it has, and you can span the years, like from the golden age of arcades up into now. And it's not that like there's not good stuff coming out now. It's just like you said, it's a little bit different. But like there is a little bit more pizzazz behind it now too. Like we could have that Maximum Tune 5DX or whatever. Like we could have taken out a card and like had like our racing profile on that card, and that could have just been carried with us on our with our round one card to like remember our stats and stuff like that. Not that you don't have stat tracking now. Like whenever we play Halo, I always have waypoint up nowadays, but like
yeah.
there's stuff like that arcades weren't necessarily doing back then either.
That is like my exact kind of hope for the arcade. Like I want something more like that where I have a profile I can carry with me. Like I always loved hearing about the F-Zero AX and GX where you could bring your GameCube memory card into the arcade and pop it in and transfer stats back and forth. I think that stuff's super rad. I feel like, yeah, if we could have something that we could build a profile and track it, like that, we should probably set up next time we go, by the way. But that, like, is cool for that one game. But I do think that it was like a Bandai Namco card you got. Like, it wasn't...
Like maybe. I saw the machine, like, on the bookends of that row.
Yeah, so maybe in round one, they only really let you use it for that. We'll have to look into that and see what the deal is. But yeah, I feel like I want something that kind of like, because playing the games is fun, but having that extra layer of like, I don't know, meta.
I think Itadora had that stuff too, because I saw there's a fucking maintenance window on the disclaimer on the screen, right. Or not on the screen, but like on the board, like in the cabinet somewhere. Yeah. I don't want to call it a cabinet because it's not, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that had the same. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the thing I'd want more of, is something that I can kind of go between home and the arcade, or I don't know. I think that kind of stuff that like back and forth, or you unlock something by doing something over here, is a neat concept that doesn't get explored enough. And I think, generally speaking, games don't explore those things now because, like, how do you monetize that, right? It's like such a throwaway thing that you can't necessarily get a huge profit from, where before it would have been like, isn't this cool? Shouldn't we do it? And now it's a bit more like, well, how do we convert that into, and it never works. But what about you? Was there some experience that you're still hoping gets made, or?
Not that I could think of. I do. There will be a day. I'll plan like a little vacation around it, but like they're starting to open up these F1 sim, like arcade. I want to call them arcades because that it's sim racing, and if the wrong person hears that, they're gonna fucking put their finger on their glasses and be like, "Well, simulation reason." But they're gonna have those types of bars, and I think there's one in Boston they're building. I think they're building another one somewhere in the United States as well. But like, I would like to go to one of those at some point. That way, I get the whole laying down experience.
You're not physically moving a car; it's still like an arcade.
No, it's an arcade cabinet, but I think they have some of the turbulence and the actual like cool wheels, and they have like the three or four screen designs.
Which that's like a bit of how like the original Outrun was, right? Like you had the hydraulics in the machine and Space Harrier, like stuff like that. I feel is still cool and still has a place. It just, those also have components that are easy to break and difficult to maintain, so of course it doesn't happen as frequently as you'd like. I am terrible at them, and I obviously didn't win anything this time, but I do love that round one had a ton of claw machines, because that just, it felt like Japan again, but also there's something stupid about those that's fun. Do you think the arcade's going to be around in 10 years?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it found its niche, like what you said, like with the barcade, the Dave and Buster's thing, you got to have other stuff in it, but you can have a section for arcade.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think round one works too in America. It's just so weird, like with the claw machines and all the other like Asian, Japanese, whatever, Korea. I don't even know where some of those rhythm games were coming from.
Yeah, the stuff's all over the place. And that's an experience you can't replicate easily in some other space. So I think you're right. Final question. Do you think we ever get to a point where you'll get random arcade machines back in grocery stores?
Ooh, no. The Maryland lottery machines make too much money, probably.
Yeah, you're probably right. And then of course, as mentioned, we need to rank the arcade here on the list.
Oh yeah.
I guess
Let me tell you.
We did the ranking before we went to the arcade, right? The fake mock.
Yeah, you said it. You said it. Oh, did you say it on air, or was it right after?
I can't remember, but let's go with me maybe saying it on air. Where do you think it ranks, or where did I say it ranked?
You were like in the 50s, I think.
That makes sense. Yeah,
because that was the one I was like, no, it should be higher. And then we played Bomberman. I was like, Billy Hatcher's kind of better than this.
Yeah, see? No, we're not actually going to rank arcade. But come back next week when we talk about Halo Combat Evolved a bit more. And we'll talk a little bit more about that Halo Fireteam Raven. The week after that, we'll be back with Outrun by Sega. Until then, thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. And thanks, Arcades, for still being around. See you next time. Bye.